So while I briefly covered this in a previous update video, the latest patch in Overwatch dropped alongside an interview, and while the patch notes themselves don't reveal too much of Blizzard's thoughts, luckily, the content and discussions with other content creators certainly do. So two things that I mentioned before is that Junker Queen is getting some quote-unquote spicy changes, that's just straight from the interview, and on top of that, we also know that Roadhog is getting a soft rework, and both of these got me thinking, what does this truly mean? With Roadhog, with the rework that's coming, how can they fix it? Because they are substantially destroying his one-shot. The developer seemed quite on edge when he was talking about the upcoming rework, meaning that he's going to play extraordinarily differently. Now, the thing about Roadhog is he's a little bit of a snowflake and a sticky hero. If you nerf him too much, he actually becomes useless, because right now, what does this kit actually cycle on? He can't really tank for his team too much except just jumping in the way of damage and healing himself. He doesn't have too much range, so his best thing is wait for your cooldown, hook the squishy, one-shot him, and hopefully turn the battle. That is exactly what's happening. Now, his damage output is so high, and his cooldowns are too low, where that one-shot is becoming his entire playstyle, and still is. So, we know that that's what they're going to address. The one-shot is very frustrating to play against, and it's just overall not a super fun mechanic. If we were to assume that the one-shot is completely removed, what will Roadhog be useful for? Well, that's probably why he called it a soft rework, because some other things probably need to be changed. Let me know what you think Roadhog should become in the comments down below, and I know most of you are just going to say deleted. But on a serious note, let's take his kit one by one. First of all, his ult, I believe for the most part is okay. I don't think that's gonna get reworked or touched. His hook is the primary contender. I think the hook needs to have a longer cooldown so you can use it less often. However, its use case needs to change a tad bit if the one shot is going to be completely removed. My thought process is that the hook stuns or CCs slightly longer, but the hook itself is on a longer cooldown, and it plays out a little bit more like an Sleep, where you're hooking the squishy to focus them down with your team. His teamwork is gonna need to go up. I think he needs to swap from being a very strong solo carry to a team-oriented tank. So one, maybe his hook CCs longer, plays a little bit more like an Sleep, bring them in, focus them. The only way to actually kill the target you hook is with teamwork, not just by one-shotting them with zero counterplay. Okay, that'd be one thing. The second thing, in my opinion, would be to change up his heal, because right now, not only does he heal substantially, but the damage reduction on himself is crazy. It means he can survive quite literally anything at any point, as long as he has that heal ready. The heal itself should be offloaded from being a solo carry tank to maybe, again, supporting with the team, being a team player. Have it reduce the damage on himself less, so he becomes less tanky. I would say leave the heal amount the same, like let it heal his health for the most part, and then offload the nerfs into an AoE effect. Have it slightly heal, or better yet, damage reduce the teammates around him. Have him become way more squishy, but if he can position correctly and play with the team, he can help actually tank for him, which I know is kind of a wild idea. Roadhog playing a tank for his team is not something he's ever really done. But think about it right now, right? Ramatra is supposed to get in the way, his other form has a shield, Reinhardt can protect his team, D.Va can protect her team. They all have something that helps them inherently protect the team. Seem like Doomfist, right? Doomfist blocks, that's how he protects. Ramatra in his other form now blocks. Orisa spins her little freaking javelin to help block. So that's something that they want to keep implemented, and that's why they originally had the damage reduction. But what happened is, since it heals him as well, it's made his survivability way too high. Now, there's a lot of things they can do. Maybe it does 0 damage reduction to himself and it only heals health, meaning he can still get completely annihilated, but with good positioning, he can damage reduce the team around him, so it buffs the team around him. Maybe half of it gets unloaded to his team, so he can still play that tank role, but lower the whole solo carry, right? It is tricky, and my ideas could be completely incorrect, but that's my way of thinking. Reduce his solo carry and increase his team play coordination. That's how I would see it. But let me know what you guys think. On top of that, we also have Junker Queen spicy changes. Now, they didn't call it a rework, but at this point, since they've had her overpowered and then underpowered for so long, it does look like Junker Queen she's also going to become kind of a sticky hero. Funny enough, of course she will, because she was designed inherently very similar to Roadhog as a tank. I mean, just think about it. Instead of a hook, you pull him in, you got a shotgun. It's kind of funny, but in the end, she's suffering from a similar issue, but she doesn't have that insane heal or damage reduction at her fingertips to keep her survivability high. But of course, she does have Commanding Shout, which, funny enough, of course, heals 200 to the self immediately and 50 to nearby allies. Kind of funny, because that's kind of what I suggested with Roadhog. And I know by default it seems like it'd be strong, but Junker Queen can have it and still be an extremely underpowered hero. You can see why it could work with Roadhog as well. Of course, it would increase their similarities, but if it increases balance, it's most likely worth it. Now, of course, there's the argument that her survivability is in an okay spot, especially after the buff, and that's okay, but a tank has two main statistics that Blizzard has backed themselves into a corner with. They have to have good survivability, and they have to be able to help at least try to assassinate a target, because now it's one tank, not two tanks. So the tanks are, of course, each an individual mini raid boss. But what we're seeing over and over is, well, it's very hard to balance that one tank role, because look at Doomfist, right? Give him too much damage and he's completely dominating the field. It is hard to play against him. He's not fun to play against. He's killing me too fast. He's an assassin. He doesn't feel like a tank, but then it's also really hard to kill him. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Reduce his tank by reducing his shield, change up his cooldowns, mess up his ult, or mess up his combos, or worst of all, if you just nerf his damage, he becomes useless. It becomes Boop Fist again. He doesn't deal enough damage to assassinate or play the tank role. Now, what happens with a lot of tanks, someone like Orisa, sure, I hate her, but she's actually designed in a decent way, right? She can tank for the team by jumping in front. She has the spear. Her ult is something more like a Mei ult, right? It's in an AoE that can be played off with the team, and she can keep shooting from far. So she feels somewhat balanced between tanky and damage. Sure, again, I hate playing her. I think she does too much damage, but that's just my bronze opinion. It doesn't matter. Like, design-wise, looking at logistically, she's designed in a way that can be buffed and nerfed in a better way. It's easier to balance someone like Orisa, but anyone who's supposed to be playing up close and personal is where Blizzard is truly having trouble. Junker Queen, Roadhog, Ramattra for a little bit, but at least he's a little bit easier because he has a second form, right? So it's a little bit easier to balance. Doomfist, etc., right? Up and close personal is difficult because you need high damage, but they still got to play that tank role that they're in, and those two inherently don't go very well together. That is how I'm seeing it personally. So what can they do, right? That was a lot of blabbering. What can they do for Junker Queen? Well, truth be told, maybe similarly to what I talked about with Roadhog. I mean, her shout already gives 50 extra heal to her teammates around her. I mentioned damage reduction with Roadhog and an AoE for effect, of course at a smaller and reduced scale, and I think this whole pseudo support tank might work best for the up close and personal. Her Jagged Blade maybe can slow them for a little bit. I know CC is something very, very touchy, but I think I would prefer some slight CC in the sense of similar to an Ana Sleep to play off of your team than a straight up one shot, right? A slight CC means both sides will play on team, meaning let's say you throw a Jagged Blade at the support, you pull them in, they're also slowed slightly, your axe deals massive damage, but it's not quite enough to completely finish them off, and they still could get away just by those perfect timings, meaning you need your team to play together. On the flip side, let's say you Jagged Blade in a Mercy, she should be in a very vulnerable position unless her team plays off of her to save her. This kind of pseudo support tank should work in a way where it's whatever teamwork is best wins. I know that's not the most fun always, that whole solo tank, the way Roadhog is now, and it's the way Junker Queen could be if buffed, is they become this crazy raid boss solo carry. But that's not very healthy for the game, no matter how you slice it. Overall, it's a hard topic to cover, and all I can do is give an opinion. It could be wrong, but both, I guess if I wanted to summarize what I'm saying, is move these tanks in towards a direction in which they can be oppressive when played correctly with a team, and they can still have that fun up close and personal brawl without just completely one-shotting and removing counterplay. Easier said than done, and I'm not oblivious to that.